It's Dr. Trevor. It's great to be with you today. So today we're actually going to have a conversation about something I'm pretty excited about, which is training like an athlete. We're going to talk about sports psychology and what it teaches us about everyday resilience. So just a quick note about me. I'm a former soccer player, played as a kid, played club ball growing up, played high school ball, went on to play college ball. Like that was my thing. I loved playing soccer, and then had the privilege of coaching my boys when they were little and they were playing like little league, and then through rec ball, and then eventually into club ball, and had the chance, the honor to coach at the high school level for several years. And so just from my own experience and my own opportunities to be in the world of sports, but also pairing that with the work of psychology and this clinical work that we get to do in our offices every day. So here's what's important about today. You don't have to have a uniform on. You don't have to have a history of playing sports or even being an athlete to be able to learn about what sports psychology can teach us in our everyday circumstances, situations, but also obstacles, challenges, and opponents. Because reality is we're all actually training for something like a tough season, a challenging relationship, a leadership role, or for some of us, just trying to get through the day, or since it's Monday, just trying to get through the week with some kind of plan, some kind of peace, or some kind of purpose. And so what happens is we're all kind of under pressure. And so we can learn from these principles today how to lead through it, how to live through that with resilience. So here's one of the profound things we know. A fundamental truth we know in sports psychology is that the mental game drives the physical game. So as much as we think about it, athletes don't just train their bodies, they also train their minds. Because here's what they know, because if the mind set fails under pressure, well, the performance follows. It will too. So when we're in those high stake moments, like the difficult situation, the new job interview, the parenting meltdown, the moment of self-doubt, whatever's going on, there's this idea of mental performance. And mental performance isn't just about what you think, it's about how you manage your focus, your emotions, your identity in those moments that matters most. Okay, so let's talk about this from again, it's Mindset Monday. So from a mindset framework, 3 key sports psychology's principles that we can apply, again, in our everyday lives. The first one is this: self-talk shapes performance. Self-talk shapes performance. So in sports psychology, athletes are trained to pay attention to their inner dialogue because the brain actually listens to what we repeat. Think about it this way: like in the physical world, we think about the idea of muscle memory, right? So if you're an athlete, you do the same thing over and over and over, right? It becomes muscle memory. If you're a musician, you play or sing or whatever it is you're doing the same part over and over and over, it becomes muscle memory. If you are an auto mechanic, if you are a painter or a sculptor, if you are, pick whatever it might be, right? The things that we repeat, right? The brain listens to what we repeat. So think about it this way from this idea of like mental performance that I talked about earlier. So maybe there's this inner dialogue that says, I'm never going to make the shot. Well, it sort of becomes this self-fulfilled prophecy. What happens then? We don't make the shot. How about this is a different, like a shift in our inner dialogue? Something like, I've trained for this moment and I can handle it. What does it do? It activates confidence and clarity for us, right? To be able to calm and to be able to step into that moment, as I mentioned, with confidence. So here's a life application for us. How can we use this in the week ahead? Start catching your self-talk. What I mean by self-talk is it doesn't have to be out loud. Self-talk is usually, again, this inner dialogue that's happening. So the life application here is start catching it. Start paying attention to it. And if need be, we're going to start to challenge it and we're going to start to change it. Think about it this way. Ask yourself this question when you pick up on some of the negative self-talk or the dialogue. Maybe it's, what would I actually speak to a teammate or a coworker the way that I'm speaking to myself? Like you're challenging that negative self-talk and then shift it, right? Not in some kind of like fake positivity, but focused on truth. So the ability to extend grace and be patient with yourself, just like you would be with others. Okay, that's the idea of self-talk shapes performance. Okay, and the application there, as I mentioned, is be able to pick up on, and we're going to catch, we're going to challenge, and we're going to change some of that particular negative self-talk by asking and prompting that a question. As I mentioned, would I speak to a teammate, a friend, a coworker, the way that I am treating myself? Again, catch it, challenge it, change it. Okay, so the next one is this. Focus on process over outcome. I love this one because there's been so many studies done over periods of time. Coaches and athletes, they focus on what they can control, right? Their efforts, their preparation, their mindset, right? Rather than focusing on the things that might be beyond their control. One of the studies is done, and I love this illustration of high level athletes. So, from whether it's Olympians, professional football players, basketball players, soccer players, track athletes, whatever it is in their sport, the highest level. Again, this focus on process over outcome. Let me give you an example from basketball. They watched and trained and spent time with high level basketball players. And they talked about this idea of what happens when they get to the free throw line and they dribble and they go through their rhythm. They all have a process that they do. And what happens when they release the ball, right? From the free throw line to the basket. And they have this mindset, right, that they can control what happens, where they stand, what their stance is, how many times they bounce the ball, if they take a deep breath, if they have a visual on the basket, the ability to focus in, right, feel the ball in their hands and feel the ball release and roll off their hands. But then they've also been trained to be able to let go when they let go, right? To be able to say, hey, when I've done everything I can do, which is release the ball, at that point on, it's out of my hands. It's out of my control. Isn't that interesting? Right? This idea of focus on the process over outcomes. Here's what we know often about those who don't have this mentality is we're so fixated and we're so focused and we get so anxious about the possible outcomes, like what this could happen, or this could happen, or this might happen, or this might happen, or what if it goes this way, or what if it goes this way, or what if they like me or don't like me, or if I get it, or if I don't get it, or like we spin out, right? When we focus on the outcomes, we're so fixated on getting it just right and having it to be perfect rather than focusing on our process. Consider that, right? Focus on process over outcomes. So if we were to think about this from our own lives, like in your own life, identify what is process focused, like habits, communication, intentions, versus what's outcome focused, like approval, timing, others' reactions, right? Learn the process. Pay attention to the process. Show up with consistency. I love this from sports psychology. Trust the long game. Okay, here's the third principle from sports psychology. After we talked about self-talk shapes performance, focus on process over outcomes, and then this one. Repetition builds confidence. Repetition builds confidence. And it comes from this idea. Confidence isn't just a feeling. It's actually a result of repetition. We feel confident when we have done something over and over and over and over. And so in sports psychology, athletes don't wait to feel confident. Feel as in the emotion of it. They build it by doing reps physically, mentally, and emotionally. And one of the things we find with athletes, right, is they do the same thing. We talked about muscle memory just a minute ago, over and over and over and over and over. You know what's actually really cool about this? So we don't just see this with high performing athletes. We see this in high performance people, like period. Right? They're committed, and we talked about self-talk. We talked about the process, but this idea of repetition. One of the things that makes great people of leaders in their industry or innovators in their field or athletes on the court or the field. This is an interesting thought, is they get very comfortable with boredom. What do I mean by that? They get very comfortable with repeating the same things over and over and over. Right? A runner who gets up and gets going and runs and runs and runs the same route day after day, the same training regiment, right? A baseball player who's throwing the ball and again and again and again, or swinging the bat over and over and over, right? A quarterback who's doing the same thing, a receiver who's running the same routes over and over and over, a swimmer who's running the same laps, or who's swimming the same laps over and over, right? Think about this in their nutrition. They have nutrition plans that happen repeatedly over and over, right? They've gotten comfortable with boredom. Why do I share that? Because repetition is so hard for so many of us. We resist boredom, right? We're constantly jumping and moving to the next trend and the next thing and the next option and the next strategy and the next whatever it is, right? We avoid boredom at all costs. But again, going back to sports psychology, repetition builds confidence. So life application, think about this, like confidence in parenting, in leadership, in emotional regulation, in whatever it might be. It doesn't come all at once. It's built in those little moments over and over. When we show up, when we try again, when we have endurance and perseverance, time after time. Okay, so confidence is remembering, catch this, how far you've come, not just how far you have to go. That's what confidence is, right? Confidence tells us, hey, I've come so far. Right? I'm confident in whether that is on the court, on the field, or whatever it might be, or in our offices, in our day jobs, in our family rooms, living rooms, or in our cars, wherever we are. Confidence comes, it's built from repetition. All right, I want to insert a little bit of this as how this plays into, we think about this from a spiritual perspective, like in our faith. I love the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians. In fact, he talks several times in the New Testament about running a race, where he talks about endurance, he talks about perseverance. But in 1 Corinthians, he says this, he says, everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. And then it says, they do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. So what's he talking about? He's talking about not just the athlete who works hard to get a crown or to get a trophy or a medal, but he's talking about really the work of becoming more like Christ. He's talking about Christianity and the commitment and the resolve and the purpose, right, to following him and leading others towards him. In the midst of this is thousands of years ago this was written, right? He reminds us we're all in training. He reminds us that mindset matters just as much as the mission, and spiritual resilience. I love it. If you read through this verse or this passage, it doesn't happen by accident. Spiritual resilience is intentional. Just like we talked about sports psychology, just this part of being able to lean in, with our habits, our behaviors, our rhythms, our routines, in the same way we think about it. We lean in. We lean in with our faith. We lean in with our heart. We lean in with our emotions. We lean in to our relationships. Okay, so I want to talk as we wrap up just about some practical applications for you this week. Things that might be mental reps. Let's think about it that way, right? Like you're repping a weight, just like you would just strengthen a part of your body. We're talking about, again, this idea of mental fortitude, this idea of resilience. Okay, here's a couple reps for you this week. So the first one is this, based on what we talked about in sports psychology: reframe self-talk. So as we already talked about, we want you to catch a critical or fearful thought. Just catch it. Then we want you to challenge it. Is it true? Is that really the thought that I want to hold on to? Do I really believe that? And then we want you to change. We want you to replace it with something clear, truthful, and forward moving. Okay, the second one is this: focus on what you can control rather than what you can't control. This was based on the sports psychology principle of talking about process versus outcomes. So this week, choose a behavior or a habit that aligns with who you want to be. All right, with clarity, with consistency. Okay, you're going to choose a habit or behavior that aligns with who you want to be. Do it consistently, regardless of the outcome. Did you catch that? Regardless of the outcome. Don't be fixated or focused on the outcome, but rather just the consistency of showing up and doing it. I actually did that this morning. I was tired. I didn't want to get up, but I did anyways. I rolled out of bed. I decided I was going to go for a run. I was just feeling off this morning. I had this moment of maybe I'll just go back to bed. Maybe I'll just call it and I'll be done. But no, I followed through. I focused on what I could control. I got outside. I got my shoes on. I started into my run, and sure enough, like, it was an off day for me. So I ended up walking. I ended up just walking out the rest of my route because that was part of my process. I have certain days a week. I run certain distances. I exercise certain times. That was part of it. So rather than being down on myself, they ended up walking rather than running. Rather than being frustrated with my pace that I was tracking, that it was so far off from what my standard is or what my goals are, right? I was able to focus on what I can control, which is I'm going to put one foot in front of the other, and I'm going to just walk out this workout. And then I'm just going to commit to, you know what? I'm going to get some sleep. I'm going to stretch. I'm going to nutrition, and I'm going to be ready to go again for tomorrow. Okay, and then this last one. Here's one I want you to focus on this week. Ground yourself in something you believe in, something about faith, something about your spirituality. So I want you to take a moment, reflect, breathe, reset, and I want you to anchor in some kind of truth. Some kind of truth before you jump in and act or you react. Again, think of these things as like your reps for the week, right? They don't take long, maybe just a few minutes, but they build strength little by little over time. All right. It's fun to be able to share a little bit about this, again, this world of sports psychology. And if there's anything I hope that was helpful for you, we'd love to hear from you, or maybe something you're committed to as you heard this challenge for today. I think one of the important takeaways is just this, is that we're all training for something. In this work that we can do, again, it's not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about showing up, right? It's about progress. It's about being intentional, right? It's intentional about growth. That's what it is. So you're in training this week. Let's treat your mind like such, right? Okay. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Look forward to seeing you soon.